Okay, chapter 2. The next step was to experiment with the surface treatment. I've already kind of given you a sneak preview of that. A complicated shape indeed. So why not a complicated surface too? Ah, I see. Superfluous. Now, and how it must have known its name. Because I was laughing about it when we were naming it. I just thought, superfluous. Everything on it is more than you would ever need. You don't need any of this. So it's got a wonderful name called Superfluous. This was really the first project we took on during our Italian sojourn, inspired by the many layers of history. The introduction of perspective, still so prevalent in the Italians' work, the ancient crackled surfaces, and the courtly dignity, even in the common countryside. We decided to continue the theme. This is an important thing that I wrote here. Very important. I didn't realize it until I read this to review it before reading it to you now, many years after I wrote it. Okay, listen to me, because I think it's a great description of how Richard and I have worked. We decided to continue the theme of incongruous elements, albeit with the cross-culture exposure we pack with us, and the peeled eye for the newness of the moment. I'll read that again. We decided to continue the theme of incongruous elements, albeit with the cross-culture exposure we pack with us, and the peeled eye for the newness of the moment. So that's Victoria and Richard MacKenzie-Childs. Nice to meet you. We found another old dish, actually. I think it was a group of 6 dishes hanging on a wall. They were painted in this sort of blue on blue on blue subtle damask, which must have taken days to decorate. In the centers of each, well, okay, so here's an example. This is what I'm talking about. Blue on blue on blue, all layers of blue. And all these little details. So Richard and I made up our own damask designs, inspired by the ones on these dishes on the wall. But aren't they beautiful? In their own way. Each one different. And here's another one. It was so weird to paint a whole painting with one tube of oil paint. So it was a very weird experience. Anyway, okay, so in the centers of each of these dishes that we saw hanging on a wall, I don't even know where we were. We were in one of the potteries, and they were back in some kind of a dusty little room. Nobody was really noticing them or paying any attention, and yet they were so beautiful to us. It said in the centers of each was a different spray of flowers. Part of the attraction was that they were all pitted and chipped and dirty. The subtlety was achieved through the loveliness and allure of lead in the glazes, which after several decades of its decline, one feels so warmed again by the richness of it. There is nothing like lead in glaze to get the depth and inner glow so desired by the artist. Now, of course, we did not use lead, but rather worked for several more months to find an expressive quality in glaze which would take us ultimately to a whole new world of work. It didn't take us where we thought we were going to go, but it brought us into a new world. But let's back up to the design elements again. First of all, I did bring I found a plate actually the plate that we first did the decorations of. We were just using a regular dinner plate for this. And I just wanted to show it to you because their flowers weren't the same kinds of flowers as our flowers. But as you can see, we love thistles. So we had thistles and roses and lilies and morning glories and a few little berries here and there. These are all in memory of Heather, the raspberry girl. Someday I'll tell you that story if you don't already know it. Just remind me and I'll tell you the story of the raspberry girl. Okay, so now we're going backwards a little bit to chapter 3. Not backwards, but I have to keep on retracing because there's so many layers in the learning process here. At first we employed this damask. I don't know, why do I call it damask? You know how the Dutch, they don't call it, what do they call it? Oh, I forgot. It starts with a D also. Delft. It's kind of like a Delft. That's what it is. You know, the Dutch have make tiles and things out of blue and white designs. So this is kind of like a Delft idea. Okay, so at first we employed this idea and added a shocking transition between it and the eating surface of the dish. And that sort of, with that sort of round, shadowed golden line. Look closely to see the variation of color in the gold ochre frame. Okay, so here's a good example. See, the frame is a kind of, here you can see it too. It's a golden frame in there, but it's two tones of, here, you can see it here too. Yeah, so it's just like a golden coil that goes around, only it's flat. Okay, and next to it, a crude variation of a classic pen ornamentation. When you look at an old map, a nautical map or a chart or a certificate, you'll often see this design. This is like a crude imitation of it, but the black and white, I called it a sort of thin black and cream colored clickety track of oblong blacks. That's how I described it. Clickety track of oblong blocks. So that's what this is. This isn't black and white checks. This is a clickety clack of, wait, what do they call it? A clickety track of oblong blocks. So we had this transition figured out, and then we were going to have the flowers in the middle, right? That's how we were planning. Then, on the flat surface of the dish, we drew out and painted a bouquet of flowers. But we picked our own bouquet, which contained roses, thistles, of course. We practiced painting this idea on a traditional dinnerware shape, since our own new shapes were so long in the modeling. See, they were still working on this modeling project. So it was really, we just thought, we've got to get going. So we just started thinking, okay, what's the surface decoration going to be like? And so we had to use just a regular dish to do it on. Actually, my cousin, was given the only piece we kept as of this motif that we were working on, as an engagement gift. We loved it, and we had done it on here, on one of these. So you don't get to see it. It's long gone now. We loved it, but it had one flaw. Not technical, not practical, not visual. But rather, I guess I could say, it was a flaw of invention. This is very important. With the wonderment of exploring the old world, and with the added pressure from it, that we could change little or nothing at all, we were momentarily frozen in time, their time. we had not yet mustered the gumption again to break through the time-honored tradition, to do what we so naturally do, to shake it all up a bit, or a lot, and rattle the shackles of time loose. There were some changes, but not nearly enough for us, for the gentle disturbance which is the artist's job to stir up in the world of tradition. All the elements were finding each other, but for the flowers, as pretty as they were in the way of a new play on the stage. So I think this is really important, because I believe that's why a lot of people copy or imitate. It's because they feel constricted by the power and the grip that an established visual experience has on the world. And it's like, black and white checks, I've got to do everything in black and white checks. I've got to learn how to paint black and white checks. Because it has such a powerful impact. We got the idea of black and white checks from a marble floor in a palace in Europe somewhere. And it also shows a lot of perspective very easily on the diamond or on the straight. And but I could see that had happened to us. We were in Italy. Everything was just so perfect the way it was. And we didn't feel we wanted to interrupt it or interfere with it. But then we woke up and we thought, no, this is not our here. We're not here to do what they did. We're here to do what we can do to bring a new visual experience. And so the flowers were getting in the way of a new play on the stage. So we shifted our attention and started drawing out the Italian Renaissance invention of perspective. What a funny juxtaposition. Sweet little subtle blue patterns, sharply interrupted by the ornamentation of an old maritime map, and in the flattest part of the plate, a 3D trick, like it was pulled right out of a magician's hat, just like that. Even now, I smile as I write it. Such a peculiar maneuver. It held our fascination, like a sweet bouquet could never have done. Two sweet elements, the damask, as I was calling it, and the flora were just too much sugar. So we began playing with all sorts of these perspective patterns on plates. And this is an honor to the Italians in the Renaissance who these are like the Medici balls on the Medici family crest. And see how it looks like you could pick those balls up. Aren't they great? And then here is the blocks. It's all perspective. It's all fake. It's not really blocks, it's faux blocks. And then here, we just had our crest. And then here, it was like, there was one where I had tried other things, but see, you can almost pick it up like it's sticking out of the plate. And then here, like a globe. Whoa, it almost looks like it goes round, doesn't it? And then this one is a little less, this is more of just a really fun pattern, a design of it weaving in and out of itself. And then here, the same kind of thing is on the saucer, with these pointy diamond shapes coming out. And here, like folded paper. So there we go. And I mean, it was so perfect. Of course, there were many other tries in getting it right. in between the work of our flora mode and the 3D patterns. Finally, we got the plates, at least the first go, which were not right for several more trials. But we began painting in the general idea. We would draw it out, and then we would also share it with the artisans, and they would try their hand with glaze. Often between the artisan, the fire, and our newness to the process, we would find enchanting serendipity. Some of these twists were turned into the ultimate image, and others cast away along the way. All of this took several more months of teaching, trials, and tries. Let's go into section 4.